Now, no,
We're good to go.
should be good to go. It should be transitioning.
Okay, I'd like to call the budget meeting or financial plan meeting, special meeting of council to order. I'd like to get a mover for the adoption of the agenda. Mr. Carey and Mr. Banks, second. Call for the question, all in favor? Carried. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to our financial plan. First of all, I'd like to let people know that I'd like to thank the staff and council for working very hard in preparing the financial plan documents for today and for the presentation that you're about to hear. I would like to introduce for the public, for the first time, our new CAO, Mr. Kerry Swanson, who started as of Monday. And today's presentation will be done by our acting CAO right now, which is Roger Bouvier. And I'd like to, again, thank him for all the work that he's done in preparing this financial plan. So with that, I'd like to pass the presentation on to
Roger. We have a resolution to go into the public hearing.
Okay, public hearing.
Read it.
Okay.
It resolved that the special meeting of council be recessed for the purpose of holding a scheduled public hearing to present the 2021 financial plan.
Can I have a mover, please? Mr. Banks, Mr. Carey, second. Call for question, all in favor? We are now in a public meeting. Roger,
Okay.
you have the floor.
You thank me for the work I've done on here, but I certainly want to recognize Mark also as a financial officer. Had a great deal to do with the preparation of the budget, and so it's thanks also to him to where we're at this budget today. So we're going to go through the presentation. Those of you at home who are watching can access it. A copy of our 2021 financial plan is on the website. You can follow it there. And I'm going to be going over page by page and give you some explanation on how we arrived at what's going on. A copy of my presentation will be put on the website tomorrow morning. And so there's some numbers in there that might take a bit of time to explain tonight. So this way you'll have details of exactly what we're talking about. I'm talking about things like reserves and balances and things like that. I don't want to go into reading all of that. So the first part of the that we have in my presentation is I made a little bit of a brief review of what the assessment, the budgets, and school levies have been over the last 5 years, just to show council and the public kind of where we've been going. Are we going up or down in our expenses? And I'll give you a couple of examples. 2017, the total taxable assessment of the town was $99 million. 2021, we're down to 97 million. So in some ways there, it's gone down. We hit a high of 102 million in 2019, and since then, our assessment has dropped. The budget was 2,742,000 in 2017. This year is 2,937,000. Other revenues, reserves, and transfers were $1,059,000 in 2017. They're $1,043,000 this year. The school levies used to be $1,119,000, and this year they're $1,096,000. So the school taxes have been for renting for the year. Interest on investments, any money that we have in the bank on reserves. Unconditional and conditional provincial grants. Some grants we get from the province are unconditional, meaning we can take that money, do whatever we want with it. Others are grants that are conditional, meaning we get a grant for sewer and water, we have to do sewer and water projects. And $143,000 is being transferred from surplus accumulated from previous years. So every year, a municipal budget gets either a surplus or a deficit. And you accumulate these surpluses over the years. So this year, we're taking $143,000 out of that to assist in our budget. Going to page, so that includes page 1 and 2. I'm just going to go quickly over page 2 of the budget. And as I said, these are all, I mentioned most of it already, but just you can see what we budgeted last year, what we actually received last year, and what we're budgeting for this year. And when we prepare these budgets, that's what we look at. We go back 2-3 years and we look at what did we budget over the last 2-3 years and what did we actually spend. And those numbers vary for various reasons. Interest rates could have gone up. Maybe people pay their taxes on time and get less revenue from interest. Maybe there's less tax certificates sold. Maybe we get more government grants. That number is floating all the time. We never really know. But if you look at last year and this year, for example, for this page on page 2, last year the other revenue was budgeted at $597,000. This year was $570. That's pretty close, you know. Last year we budgeted $597, we collected $589, and this year we're budgeting $570. So we're staying in that pretty happy medium. Okay, go to page 3, and we're into the expenditures now. Total expenditure this year for general government services is $590,000, and I'm rounding off as I'm saying here, from $566 last year. The types of expenses we have under general government services, legislative, those would be fees that we pay council indemnities is listed there. Again, about less than $1,000 increase over last year. Chief administrative staff and staff, that's the administrative salaries, $276,000. You see a bit of a large increase there. You have to remember that normally this office would have 3 staff: CAO, finance officer, and the clerk. We've been running now with 3 plus myself in the last little while. Right now we're running with 5 because we have the budget for that. We have myself, who's going to be gone shortly, the new CAO, we have the municipal clerk, and the 1 training. So it's going to cost a little bit more this year. Those numbers should drop next year. We'll be back up to people again. And there's the adjustment for the salary adjustments that we heard. There was another 2% on that. Office expenses, $77,000. Last year was $56,000. Additional costs there. We don't have a lot of detail on exactly what those costs would be, but it'd be some hydro bills and general bills in running the office. Legal, we budgeted 5 last year, we spent 4. We put $6,500 this year. You have to be aware also that when we budget for legal costs, we might have $6,500 there because that's where we charge our legal fees. But there could be some of that paid back by a developer, for example, and that will come up under revenue. So the numbers are higher here, then the revenue will be a little bit higher because they're paying it back. Like, for example, if we deal with a developer, we pay the bill to the lawyer, but then we bill the developer and we get that money back. So those numbers fluctuate. Audit, budgeted 12 last year. Actually spent $20,000 on the audit last year because we had to do some catch-up. We got an estimate this year of $15,000. We're back to that. Assessment. Assessment is the number that we pay to the province of Manitoba to do the assessment of all our properties in the municipality. They do all that for every municipality in Manitoba. They charge a fee for that. They also participate in the board of revision. They do anything assessment-wise as well, provided by the province. And as I said, they charge a fee for that. It's actually down a little bit, almost. That's actually down a little less than what we actually paid last year. Taxation, $17,000. That would be the cost of sending our tax bills out, printing our tax bills, stamps, envelopes, and also the cost of any tax that the municipality pays. So when you do a special levy, for example, for sewer and water, exempt properties also pay. Exempt properties include the province, municipalities, exempt properties. So if there's a special levy put on in the community, this office is actually taxable. We had to tax ourselves. So therefore, we do it, that's what municipalities are required. So the total of that is about $17,000. Conventions, you see a big drop in there because, of course, this year and a good part of last year, there's hardly anything last year because of COVID. The council's not attending any public conventions, seminars, training, things. So we put a bit of money in it, but it's not going to be as much. The event convention, those type of things will not be attended. They're all done virtual. Election, last year we had a by-election. This year we're going to have another by-election. So that's running us approximately $7,500. Last year there was nothing budgeted because we didn't expect one. This year we know that there's an election. It's on June the 19th, by the way, so a little bit of a plug for when our election's coming up. Liability insurance, last year budget 18, we spent 13, we put 14. So again, you go by what you budgeted last year, you also go by what you actually spent last year. You have to remember that all these numbers are our best estimate at the time of preparing the budget. The big concern with the budget is as long as we're not over on the bottom line at the end of this budget. It doesn't matter if it fluctuates, you try your best, we try to get as close as we can. But it's always going to happen that sometimes we're over, sometimes we're a little bit under. There's no magic formula, there's no municipality that I know of that makes it happen exactly. It's just not doable. So you do your best, and you'll see by the numbers last year, the numbers are pretty good. Intergovernment relations, that would be if we belong to the fees we pay to associations and municipalities, those type of things. There's fees that we pay there. If we were to host something with another municipality, we pay for coffee, lunch or sandwiches. There's not a lot of that again because of the COVID. Grants. These are grants that we make to organizations. Last year we budgeted 42, we spent pretty well all of it. This year we had less requests. So right now we put $30,000 in the budget. That's the request that we've had to date. It could be more. It certainly wouldn't be less than that because we have requests. Other general government sundry, we budgeted 93,000 last year. We only spent 13. We spent 17.5. And I asked you this question before, Mark. What was that number?
The 75. We had a typo in last year's budget in our website where they had added an extra zero in and turned that up higher.
That's why this year we put that should be around 17,000. So if you look at last year in general government services, they budgeted 567,000. We spent 539, and this year we budgeted 590. So we're not in the, we're in that ballpark again. It's not, not huge numbers that we're protective services. Again on page 3, the amount went up from 346,000 from 323,000. There was an increase there. Some of the costs in there would be the policing, pretty well the same as last year, $150,000. That is the fee that we pay to the RCMP, which every town in Manitoba has to pay. We get an offsetting grant for part of that, but we still have to put it in as an expense. When you look on the revenue side, there's some revenue coming to offset that. Towns and cities pay a higher fee than rural municipalities, but they get a higher grant. So that's what comes in. And the RCMP, they basically provide, they don't do the enforcement of municipal bylaws, but they will do the normal assistance in the community. We see them patrolling on our streets. They will attend if we require them for the more criminal type events. They won't be giving bylaw enforcement type enforcement. They don't do that. That's why we have our own bylaw enforcement officer. Fire department, last year budgeted 116, this been 115, we put 132 this year. there's a bit more money in the budget for things that the fire department required, so the amount was raised to offset that expense. Emergency measures organization. Yeah, 12,008, we put 13,1. Fees for the emergency measures coordinator that we have. There's also a consulting fee there that they pay to Nature Consulting for emergency measures assistance to the emergency measures coordinator. First responder, emergency measures, and also to San Andrews Municipality. These are fees that we pay for these services, 15,500. And 911, most municipalities in Manitoba now are on the 911 service. This is a service provided through the city of Brandon, and every municipality pays a fee for that. And our fee for this year is $5,150, almost the same as last year. Animal and pest control, that's we have a bylaw officer and we have an animal control officer. Those two that you see next, 8,000 for animal control, 22,000 for bylaw enforcement. That's what we budgeted this year. So again, as you see the totals, we budgeted 323. We spent 315 last year. We budgeted 346, 47 this year. Again, in the same general neighborhood. Best guess estimate of what we have for now. It could be a little lower, it could be less, a little higher. My recommendation to council when we do a budget, on the expense side, I like the budget a little higher if possible, and on the revenue side, a little lower, and you hope that you're within those guidelines that we fixed. Because if your budget exactly what you need, and we get a little surprises, and we always get them, then you can have a deficit. You cannot budget for a deficit. We can have a deficit, you can't budget for that. And if we do incur a deficit at the end of the year, municipalities are required to replenish that within the next 3 years. Council will decide if they want to do it 1, 2, or 3 years. Depends on the size, how much they want. Right. One of the largest amounts, it will be the next one on page 3 and 4, will be the transportation, roads and streets. That's normally in a lot of municipalities are the biggest expense. First one, wages and benefits. 283 budgeted last year, spent 232. And this year we budgeted 255. There's some money being recovered there for services, so the number is lower there because we're getting money from other departments to offset that. For example, I think the cemetery is one of them. When the guys go work at the cemetery cost should be paying for that, not, because we have funds for that. So we charge the cemetery, we take it out of the reserve funds to pay for it. That's one example. So we recover from other departments. Training and education, we put an amount of $5,000 up in pretty well all the departments this year for training. Probably might end up being a little bit on the high side because of the cost of training now. It's dropped a lot because of everything being online. But again, doesn't hurt to have a few extra dollars there. If we need it for something else, it'll be there. Equipment fuel, 30,000. We spent about 25 last year. We brought it to 34. Gas just went up quite a bit. Again, with fuel, we never know where we're going to be. So you want to be budgeting a little bit on the high side. Equipment repairs and maintenance, left at about the same as last year. And again, that sometimes there's surprises in there. You can think that everything's running good, all of a sudden a pump goes in a piece of equipment, a motor goes on something, and you have to come up with some repairs at the last minute. That happened last year, and you try to do your best. But you can see from last year, budgeted 21.5 and we spent 25, so we're almost right on. Equipment insurance, that's become I'm not sure why. Insurance used to be charged under one big umbrella, insurance for one time. You'll see this year that we've broken it down by departments. So the office pays for the liability, the works pays for the liability, utilities, because that gives you a more real figure of what it's costing us. So last year there was nothing budgeted for insurance, and this year we put in 10,000. Last year we were 8,800. Workshop and yard operation, 63,000. That would be everything we can think of for running the public workshop, the yard. There's numbers in there like hydro, liability insurance, telephone repairs, a large number of things. Again, we went by what we budgeted last year, what we actually spent, and we put a little bit less. Next big one is roadworks, 96,000, a little bit more than last year. This is a fairly large expense. That's the gravel for all the streets in town, dust control, cold mix for patching, sealing the streets. We'll be tendering that out, and that's what this costs for. And on page 4 at the top, we're continuing with the transportation services. Sidewalks, 1,500 budgeted. We spent about 4 last year. We budgeted 10,000. I think council felt there that there was a need to start slowly fixing and improving sidewalks in town. So we have some money in the budget this year to be go towards that project. Ditches and drainage, 10,000 budget last year. Spent 24 last year, but I think there was one major project done on Kirkstead. I think there was some large culverts down there, and that put us over the top. We don't have anything like that this year. It's just regular maintenance. We put another 10,000. Storm sewers, that's the downtown. Again, it shows that nothing was spent last year. I'm not sure if it wasn't done or could have been charged to a different account. We put pretty well the same amount for this year. Street cleaning, I think last year was all done by highways. They were not available to do it right now, so we're getting the stuff that Kingley has been doing it. We've had a few surprises now and delays because of that snow last week. We were going to be doing the testing of the gravity lines downtown, cleaning the streets. Everything got postponed because of the snow. So it should be back on shortly. Street lighting, that's for all the street lighting in the community, 38,000, we put 35. So as you see, we spent a little bit less last year than we budgeted, so we dropped it a little bit. We know that hydro rates are going up on pretty well everything, and I would expect that they're going to go up on street lights also. Traffic services, that would be any kind of signs we buy in the community, we would charge it for that, $5,000. Other road transport, that's the lease for the parking lots that we have, and also the railway repair. We have to do a railway crossing repair on Kirkstead this year, which is going to be shared by the railway company, the municipality of St. Andrews. They've approved it now, got it ready, and us. So it brought the bill from about 6,000 to about 1,600 for us, so it's pretty good saving. In the parking lot lease, there's some back leases that we're paying under to get that all resolved. Remember, we agreed that we were going to pay them, so we have an agreement coming up now for the next 5 years. So it'll be in pretty good shape. Grass cutting supplies, that would be fuel and any lines and repairs to the equipment that we buy. $4,000, and weed control, $2,800 for any spraying that we do. So as you see last year, 558, we're up quite a bit, 620. But I guess in a municipal budget, I guess if you're going to raise somewhere, this is one of your main services, probably not a bad place to go up. You're providing services, you can get an increase there. Environmental health services includes the garbage and waste collection, the landfill site, waste disposal grounds. That is an agreement we have with the community of Menard, and we paid them a flat fee. And our fee for this year is going to be $62,000, and that's negotiated up front, so that's we know exactly what it costs us for that. Collection, we budgeted $75,000 there because at the time when we did the budget, we didn't know what the new fee was going to be because we were just in the process of tendering, and that was when we opened last week. The tender for this year is going to be $135,000. So we're going to have to do some looking around for some extra funds there because we're going to be under budget after that. The contract ended, we had to renew it, and we got actually we only got the one bid. 2 people bid on it. It was just the one bid exposed that we received. So that's where we're at. Recycling service, $36,000, a little bit higher actually last year. So overall, there's an increase there, but mainly again. Actually, waste collection will be the major one, a little bit for recycling, and a little bit for the waste disposal. Public health and welfare services, $1,000 for the cemetery, for the bit of work that we will do there. The medical clinic, $10,800. That's a new expense. That's for the medical clinic downtown, which the council agreed to pay the rent, and that is offset. We have $10,800 in there. But this year we received about $8,000 in fees from either the daughter, and we got money from Age Friendly. So the real cost there, it shows 10.8, but we're actually paying about 2.8 because of revenues we're getting from other sources. And that's a 3-year contract. And the rent, we pay the rent, and the clinic pays all the employees there, they pay the payment. The payment is almost as much as the rent, so. Pretty good. And a great service for the community. Handy van service, we pay that fee for the handy van service, $4,000, similar to last year. Social assistance, same number as last year. Every municipality in Manitoba pays a fee to the province of Manitoba to administer social services. So anyone in the municipality in the town here that needs assistance financially, they go to the province, and the province looks after it themselves. We pay a small fee for that. In the past, they used to have to come to council, and they would apply, council, and the CAO would have to decide how much money to give out to somebody, and it was a very difficult process. They went out of that, and I think it was a good thing. Environmental services, planning and zoning, town of Winnipeg Beach belongs to the planning district, and we pay a fee to the planning district for $21,000, a bit more than last year. And beautification and land rehabilitation, that is for any decoration we can do in town, flowers, lanterns, flags, those type of things. We actually spent 17 last year, we did 15. That would cover our staff and all the ornamental stuff that we do. On page 5, economic development, boardwalk and water tower, that would be for any maintenance that we have to do there, $1,000. The cost of the boardwalk stones would be an expense, but then it's offset by a revenue. We sell the stone. We sell them at $50 each, and we do make a bit of a profit on there, which is a good thing. So, and we're all up to date on those. They're all printed. They're all here. So I'm hoping that they're coming tomorrow weather. They'll all be installed, hopefully before the May all weekend. That would be good.
If we don't get any more snow.
Exactly. Marketing and promotion, $1,500. Again, it's exactly what it says at the beginning. We want those calendars, those coloring books, those type of things. Any bit of promotion, marketing, budget there. Special events, live entertainment. This is to do with the bandstand. Well, not the bandstand, but the bandstand and the live entertainment. That was reduced. In 2020, it was reduced quite a bit. We've put the money back in the budget. That doesn't mean that's going to be spent, even though all the bands have been all booked and everything. If COVID doesn't allow for it, then we won't have it. So that's up in the air, and that's one of these COVID issues that we have to deal with. You want to make sure that the money's in the budget in case we're allowed to do it. Because if we didn't have the money there and you decided to do it, we'd be way over. So, bandstand and maintenance, a couple $1,000 there. Economic development and tourism, $1,000. Receptions, I don't think that you'll see much of that, but there's $500 there this year. Advertising, any promotion advertising that we would do, $8,000. And new initiatives, there's $10,000 in there. We never know during the year something new might come up, some new projects, unforeseen, or some ability to match some funds that the province wants to give us. It's nice to have a few extra dollars in our budget. Recreation and cultural services, the rec director. As you see, these are reduced somewhat because of the COVID again. You see what we budgeted last year, 48. We actually spent about 41, so we put a 40 for this year. The recreation assistant, same thing, it dropped. Last year he didn't do much work. He's working a little bit right now. The 20 might be too much. We'll see as we go through the year. All the benefits are in there for these employees, pensions, Blue Cross, life insurance, all those things. And again, you know, if the salaries are down, the benefits will be down. Education and training, as I said, we try to put a bit of money in all the departments for that. Operation and supplies, that would be for anything to do recreational wise, $8,200. Insurance, remember I said that we broke down the insurance by groups this year as opposed to all one place. So we put that in there. And the rec center, large cost there. The main cost there, of course, is running the ice plant. Is a big, very big cost of hydro. Also this year we put in a new furnace, hot water tanks. We've got some money set aside for repairs to some pumps in there. So, again, it's similar number to last year, so it doesn't affect the mill rate as much. The fact that we had 73.7 last year, we put 75 this year, so very similar number to what we budgeted. Skateboard park, we've got $1,000 in there. You never know what's going to come up there. Special events, exactly what they are, special events, $2,500. Rec programs, $3,500. The insurance, that's the insurance on the recreation center. And the curling rink would be in there too, I would think, both of them. $42,000. Big cost of insurance for these buildings. Parks and playgrounds, we got $10,000 in there for updates, repairs, maybe we have to do. And the piers, as you see last year, there was nothing budgeted, nothing spent. Council has, believe, has made a commitment to put the piers back in this year, so we have $15,000. So again, total expense of $242,000. We'll go to these are all transfers. We don't have to deal with those now. Let's go to page 6, the next page. The budget. Page 6 of the budget is the utility operating fund. It's a self-balancing fund, separate from the budget itself. The revenue that we get on these pages are basically water consumption sales. So we send our water bills. We do readings every 3 months. They're done every 3 months now, and we bill all the customers. It's about 115 mark, something like that.
110.
110. Okay. So we bill those out. As you see, last year we had budgeted only 37,000. We collected 61. We put it a more realistic number this year of $60,000. And the sewer consumption sales, same thing. We put in pretty well what we collected last year. And there's other revenues in there, penalties. The system we had here in the past, there was not a lot of penalties charged on outstanding sewer and water bills. That's going to change this year because of the way we're working on the water bills. People don't pay their water bills or sewer bills on time, there should be a penalty. Otherwise, there's no incentive for anybody to pay them. Most municipalities will have them. And that's a revenue that helps our utility system to some degree. Hydrant rentals, $3,600. Tipping fees, $15,000. Again, we've got a new contract that we're going to be opening up at the next council meeting. The old bylaw did have a rate for tipping fees, but through the years somehow it didn't seem that they were properly collected. We feel that we can collect about $15,000 this year at $25 a penny. So that's a good revenue that we'll be getting to offset our expenses in that. Connection revenue, these are funds that we would charge homeowners if we connect new lines, new connections to homes. There's a fee that we charge for that. Provincial grant, $477,000. Sounds like a big number. We're going to get into the capital portion of our budget in a few minutes, and that's 50% of what we're spending on capital projects this year for sewer and water. Now the Water Service Board pays 50% of anything we're doing. We've applied, it's been approved. That's a good thing. We're spending almost 800 and some thousand, almost 900,000, and the Water Services Board is going to pay 50% of that. So that's a big help for what we're doing. Some of the funds are transferred. We'll get into those from revenue, transferred from utility reserves. There's a 477.5. The province pays 477.5. We're transferring 477.5 from our reserves. That's the whole cost of the projects we're doing this year. In the expenditure side, we have an administration fee that we charge. Because the bills are all sent out from the staff in the office, we can charge a fee to the utility for the time that the staff takes for doing that, because they're two separate entities. So we feel we can collect about $11,000 this year in fees for work of it. Every time we send out the water bills, collecting the time we spend on that, that's a charge that we charge the utility. So the utility people get paid for that, not everybody in town. So if you don't get water, you're on your own wells, our staff shouldn't be costing you something. Only the people who are on the water system or on the sewer system should be there. Wages and benefits, that would be for the public the utilities employees. In part, there's another part lower down. Well, part of it is charged for the water, and lower down is the sewer. So we split it up, the cost of the two employees. Fire hydrants, $5,000. Transmission and distribution, that's repairs to our lines, the water lines, and upgrades and putting them in. Allocation to general fund, same amount as last year. Another one. Other water supply costs would be cost for operating the system, chlorine, all the chemicals, that kind of stuff. So a total of $92,000 in expense. And the big change there is let's see, about $30,000 in change. Well, the administration is a new fee we're collecting. There's almost $11,000 right there. So. On the sewer collection side, administration, again, we charge a fee for all the bills that we do and all the paperwork that we do in the office. Sewage collection, $5,100. Wages and benefits, that would be for the utility operator and the part-time staff that we have there. The lift station, $3,500, the cost of running that station. There would be hydro and, again, materials and chemicals. You'll see later on when I talk about the capital program, we're doing some major repairs and upgrades to the lift station. That's not charged under operating, it's capital expense. Allocation to general funds, $22,000. That's the same number as last year. Other sewage collection disposal costs, $58,000. Again, similar to numbers to last year. So the total expenditure for the operation is $1,340,000. And as you see, it's a balanced document. It has to be balanced. The revenue expense has to balance itself. There's going to be a new rate study this year for sewer water because we have to do one every 3 years. And there'll probably be some kind of an adjustment to the sewer and water rates because we need some additional money.
And that gets approved by the PUB.
Yeah, that's it. Staff can do it. We can have a consultant do it. Forward it to the Public Utilities Board. There'll be a public hearing if it's required. The board decides that, and then they set the rates. So there's input from council, there's input from staff, there's input from the community. Okay, let's get page 8. Page 8 is basically a summary. That's where all the calculations go to. School levies, all our costs are all sent to page 8, and that's where we decide our mill rate. So we'll include that in the rest of my presentation at some point. Go to page 9. Page 9 is basically some more grants that we get. Crown corporations, like we have on that page, on page 9, Central Gas, Department of Highways, Parks, Housing, for the place next door, Canada Post, they don't pay taxes, they pay grants in lieu of taxes. Exactly the same mill rate, but they call it grants in lieu. It's kind of a provincial acknowledgement that they don't have to pay taxes. If they decided some year that they said we're not paying this, we wouldn't collect it. That's never happened. That's kind of an acknowledgement that government agencies don't pay taxes, they pay grants. So we're getting $38,000 on these properties this year. Central gas buildings or lines, the parks, highways, housing for next door. That's a pretty big one for the senior home. Canada Post for the post office. Some pay farm and residential mill rate, others pay the other mill rate, which is a higher mill rate. So that's the kind of revenue we're getting from agency. Conditional and transfer grants, as I mentioned earlier on, the Water Services Board, we're getting $477,000 in grants from the Water Services Board to offset our capital budgets. Building Sustainable Grant, $30,000. This is left over from last year regarding that school gym. The gym has never been completed, but the funding is still available, so to be decided by council at some point what we're going to do. If we don't spend the money, of course, then we won't have an expense, but we want to do it. They won't pay us a grant. We have been told that we can spend it on other things, so that's going to be up for discussion. FCM grant, asset management, $80,000. We've applied for an asset management grant because all municipalities have to come up with an asset management program. And through FCM, they're going to be financing that to the tune of $80,000. So once that's complete, we get the grant from the department through the FCM to that expense. Recycling grant, $19,000. And that one again is not written in stone. It depends on how much recycling comes out. The more the people in the community recycle, the more we get up to the recycling plant, the more money we get. Sometimes on that they pay less, so it's a floating number. Village of Donauder, I mentioned that we received $3,000 from Donauder for assist with the health clinic, the payment of the rent, and the age-friendly $5,000 for the clinic grant. There's the $8,000. Page 11. There's no page 10 in the budget. Page 11 is debentures. So there's two pages of debentures. We have page 11 and page 12. On page 11, we have bylaw number 3, 2014. That's for borrowing for the fire hall and public works building back in the amount of $1.1 million was borrowed in 2014 at a rate of 4.75% for a period of 20 years ending in 2033. The balance owed at the end of 2021 will be $776,000. And the rate of interest, when municipalities borrow money, the rate of interest is locked in for the period of the loan. It's not like a home mortgage where you might do a mortgage for 20 years, but every 5 years you have to renegotiate. When a municipality borrows one for 20 years, the rate is locked in for 20 years. So that 4.75% is locked in for 20 years. That's a good thing. If the rates go up to 8-9% in a few years from now, we're locked in. I guess the bad news there is you can borrow at 3% today, but we're still in a pretty good rate compared to what it was a few years ago. We make an annual payment on that loan to the Minister of Finance. That's where the borrowing was done. Municipalities can borrow from the province, from credit unions, from banks. On that project back in 2014, they borrowed from the Minister of Finance in the province, and we make an $86,405 payment every year for 20 years. The utility operating grant, that's on page 12. Two issues there, two bylaws. Bylaw 3, 2017 for water upgrades. The municipality borrowed funds to upgrade the water system within the community. The borrowing was done as a local improvement levy. Thus, only the persons receiving the service pay for the service. So the people in the community on wells don't pay for this. This is a special levy charged to only the people, basically the downtown area that are on the municipal water system. It's a special levy. The amount of $224,000 was borrowed in 2017 at a rate of 3.5%, which is a pretty good rate, for 10 years. That expires in 2026. So 5 years from now, that borrowing will be paid off, and we won't have to make that payment anymore. The annual payment for that is $26,968, and that is paid to the Adventist Credit Union. So that eventually was done through the credit union. Bylaw 4, 2017 was for lagoon upgrades. Back in 2017, it was again done as a local improvement levy. The amount of $797,000 was borrowed at a rate of 3.5% for 10 years, and that also will expire in 2026. The balance owing on this one at the end of 2021 is $430,000, and again, the rate of interest for both of these is locked in for 10 years. The annual payment on this one is $95,879. So in 2026, we'll have $96,000 there and $27,000 available to the community for more. Normally, we would do more borrowing to do more upgrades. Hopefully, at that time, the interest rates are still low. We'll see what happens at that time. Municipalities can borrow funds. There's a maximum they can borrow. There's a formula that they can borrow at. We're well within the borrowing limits in this municipality. The council chose to do more sewer water projects, paving projects. They could borrow the money. That's the nice side on one side, but on the other side is you have to find money to pay for it. You could borrow $1 million and say we'll pay $100,000 a year. Where do we get the 100 to pay? But it's available to us. We're well within our formula. The council chose in that future year to do it. But certainly in 2026, we'll have about $125,000 available to make more payments, and it wouldn't affect your taxes at all. Page 13. Page 13 of the budget is the capital budget page. This is where we decide what projects council is going to be doing in 2021. There's several projects this year. We have a full page of them, and I'll kind of go over them. Actually, well, I'll do it this way, and I'll go back to the question after. We did have a written question on that one. I'll read over that after. So you see that the first column that we have is the estimated cost of the project. We've got about 8 or 9, 10 projects there. Gravity sewer scoping, we budgeted $30,000, and you'll see that the utility fund is paying $15,000, the reserve is paying $15,000. Everything borne under the utility fund is money that we're getting from the Manitoba Water Services Board. Remember a while ago I said a total of $477,500. All those funds are coming from the Water Services Board. The other half is coming from reserves we have for that, specifically for that. The scoping of the sewer is the sewer, gravity sewer downtown. What that means is we're going to be flushing all the lines, and we run a camera through all these to see the conditions of all the lines. The flushing should certainly be done probably on a regular annual basis, and the camera should be done on 2, 3, 4, 5-year basis, depending on how bad they were the year before. This was scheduled for April 15th this year. That's when we had the snow. So it's scheduled now, hopefully the next week or two. This scoping this year could determine some factors. If we were to find out, for example, that we have major breaks down there, or roots, or whatever, it could require some work to be done. We won't know that until we do the scoping. Lift station upgrades, I mentioned a while ago that we're doing some major improvements to the lift station, $120,000 worth. Again, $60,000 paid by the Water Services Board, $60,000 out of our reserve. So all this money that we're talking about on this page, none of that is on the tax, doesn't affect the mill rate. It's all coming out of savings or profit. It's not a nickel of this money we're spending on this page. It's coming out of the actual affecting the tax bill. It comes from previous year's money that's been put aside by council for that purpose. Sewer interconnect valves, $50,000, $25,000 from each. There's a couple of valves that affect the operation of the low pressure sewer system in the community. They've been sitting there closed for a number of years, and we just kind of found out now we want to open them up, make sure they're working properly, and they may be reopened if after we discuss it with our engineers, we find out that that's the proper thing to do. The closure of these valves has affected the low pressure sewer coming from the north part of the town right now, going directly to the lagoon on the east side of number 9 highway. What's happening now with these valves closed, the sewers that are redirected to the west side kind of goes around the downtown. So if we were in a position where we can reopen these valves, might be assist the community in running the system a little bit better. Again, we put 50,000. We may find out that it might cost very little if the valves are good. If they're damaged, it could be a maximum. These are things that you don't find out until they come up. So, again, because it's coming out of reserve, if we spend 20,000, we have 30,000 left over in our reserve. If we spend 52,000, we might have to get a little bit additional money from our reserve. Reserve money doesn't affect the budget, so it's good. You go in there, take it in and out. It's like your savings account. Lagoon sludge, the council has planned to, we have 5 lagoons here. We basically plan to, 2 of them are used for storage, they're the old lagoons. The 3 that are existing, that are in use, have a number of, fair amount of sludge in it. That's the solids that come from dumping septic tanks over the years. And what happens when you get a lot of sludge in these lagoons, you lose capacity in your lagoon. Because all of a sudden now it's full of these solids. When you're pumping water into it, there's no more room. So we're budgeting $250,000 this year to clean 1 cell, 250. It's quite a process to be done. It's got to be done with the approval of the environment people. We have to tender that. The province is paying for 50% of it. But if we were to do it and clean it all up, it'll give us a lot more capacity in our lagoon. We are limited how much sewage we can put in those lagoons, because what happens, they get to a certain amount and they overflow, and then we're in trouble. So right now, our plant has been running for over 10 days. It's running great. That's been a big factor. We've been pumping a lot of our sewage directly without having to go to our lagoon, because it's treated, goes directly into the creek, into the lake, which is what it's meant for, approved by the environment. So the 250 is going to be tendered. That's the numbers that the Water Services Board has told us to put in the budget. They're helping us right now. We may find an easier, cheaper way to do it. If we do, that would be a great saving. Maybe we can do 2 cells. Maybe we might be able to do all 3 of them. That would be good. Because these are done, the numbers I got, they were last done 25, 30 years ago. So it's not like we do these often. When you get to do them, they're a big expense. Lagoon fence and upgrade. We're upgrading the fencing and the gate at the lagoon, basically to make it more secure, being able to be in a position where we can collect our dump disposal fees better. Right now, it's a gate with a lock on it, easily accessible. We've had certainly our share of problems with people going in and out. We're limited to when we can dump in those lagoons, and with the system we have now, people have been going in and out, and we could end up in trouble by dumping at the wrong time of the year. This will be able to, by having the proper electronic system, every truck that goes in there will be monitored. We'll have cameras in there. We'll be able to charge a fee and get our money back. So it's going to be a money maker at the end of the day. We'll get revenue back. Right now, there is no method of doing it short of having the person standing there doing that. Eaton valve upgrade. Oh, the well on this one, $250 for the well upgrade. We're putting a third well, right, in downtown as a backup improvement to the 2 existing wells we have now. That's a requirement, again, that the province has suggested strongly that we upgrade our system. These pumps and systems that we have there, they only last so long. And again, the province has suggested that we upgrade it, and they have offered to pay half. So you have to do these before they break. You don't want to wait till it breaks and then we have no water, not down for several months while we're getting this done. The money's budgeted for it and it's getting done. We're just going through the licensing and getting ready to start drilling. That'll be one of our first projects on the way this spring. Eaton valve upgrades. Eaton Street has been under discussion, I guess, for some time now about paving and upgrades to that street. When we started looking at that, we found out that there's 24 sewer valves running up and down Eaton Street, shutting off the sewage coming from the side streets. We don't know what the conditions of these are, but certainly they have to be all inspected, reviewed, before we can do any work to the road. Because you wouldn't want to spend several $100,000 paving the road to find out that next year we start picking up a hole. We've got a lot of money budgeted in there. Again, this is our best guess. I don't want to give any numbers because it's a guess. It could be very low. If we found out that all the valves were good, it could be low. If we find out that all 24 are damaged, it could be more than that. So this is, again, the best estimate that we were given. We'll know when we start opening them up. So right now, as far as we know, they're all open, and the sewage from the side streets flowing into Eaton Street and then down toward the lagoon. But if we ever had a major break or we wanted to close these, we don't know if they'd be closed. Or if we close them, could we ever open them again? We can't have that. So every one of them tested, checked, repaired, and up to date. And then if we want to do any work on Eaton Street, we know that we have good lines on Eaton Street. As I mentioned right from the start, and on all these issues, it's always the best guess. But because it's money come out of the reserve, it doesn't affect the mill rate. So we spend more, less, it doesn't change the mill rate, it doesn't put us in a deficit position. So that's basically all the costs that we have for all sewer and water. It's a big expense this year, but it'll do a major upgrade to our system. I think put the town in a much better position than we are now. Others that we're doing, we've updated the accounting system in the office. We've changed. We're just in the process of doing our first training today. We'll have a new middleware system, changing from the existing Assist, which was I'll say an antiquated system that we had. We weren't able to get good records and good numbers. So the staff has been training on it today with the company that sold it to us. Several municipalities, if not the majority of municipalities in Manitoba, are on the system, and it's a great system. So it will provide some real good numbers for council to be able to access and just make the whole operation so much better. The server that we had here was quite out of date and not producing what we needed. We actually changed that a few months ago. It had to be changed before it collapsed on us. So that one has been done. And you see with these, there's no funding from the province. So 65,000 strictly out of reserve, 13.5 strictly out of reserve. But again, it's nice that the council had a reserve to go out of, because if we didn't have reserve, we would have had to put that on the tax bill. And then you get peaks and valleys. You know, you go up one year, you go down the next, you go up the next, and that's not something you want to do. You want to try to keep the taxation fairly level. You know, administration, that was for different works in the office. Basically, we're going to do some repairs and maintenance to the building itself. The thing that happened since we did this in here, the roof started leaking in the bank last week, and we've got an estimate of about $10,000 to repair the roof to put all the shingles. So it's probably a good thing if we put some money in there for that. Council will be dealing with that in the next meeting. At least we know that we have some dollars in there. Once they start leaking, we're not in a great position to say leave it. Fire department, $100,000. What we're actually doing here is we're transferring $100,000 from our general reserve to the fire department reserve. Council is putting some specific money aside. $100,000 this year, $100,000 will be put in next year. That's the plan, and that will provide us about $200,000 with interest, a bit more, to go towards the purchase of a mini pumper in next year. So that mini pumper could be purchased, and again, it doesn't affect the mill rate because the money will be in the budget for that. We were able to take it out of the general reserve, and the fact that we put it into a specific reserve means that we can't use it now to go buy a public works truck, or we can't fix the office with it, specifically for the fire department. And that's something that the fire department has been requesting, to have some money put aside for that. Public works, again, same amount. We're taking $100,000 out of the general reserve. The plan this year is to buy a skid steer to replace the existing small tractor that we have, and also we're looking at purchasing a half-ton, probably a used half-ton for the public works department. So there's 100 in there. We may not spend all that. We're looking around for prices right now. We put a number. If we spend less, and it will be less, positive, then the rest just stays in the reserve. And recreation, I mentioned before, there was $30,000 put in there. We put some money in there for paving. We've applied for funding for paving of the tennis courts and the walkway. And that's
not the tennis courts, beachside park.
Beachside park. The courts there, they're not tennis courts?
Pickleball, basketball.
Yes, that's the ball. So that would be our share of the funding. We haven't heard back yet, so we don't know where that's going to. The part two basically just explains where we're getting the money from. We're transferring $254,000 to the general reserve, $46,000 from the capital levy reserve. The capital levy reserve is money that we have in our reserve funds that we get from developers when they develop lots in this town. $600, I believe. Every time a developer, and a developer could be a one-lot subdivision, there's a fee of $600 that they put, and we put that in the special fund. We could use that money for literally anything. And we could use it for office repairs, we could use it for fire truck, we could use it for literally anything. Yeah, it's a fund that we, council will decide as they need it, what they need it for. And as I mentioned, $30,000 from building, municipal building reserve. Gas tax reserve, we're taking $265,000 out of that, $75,000 out of the water reserve, and $137,000 out of the sewer reserve. There's our $477,500 that we're putting towards the water reserve. Okay, page 14. Page 14 of the budget is the capital expenditure. every municipality in Manitoba is required by law to come up with a 5-year program. These numbers in here are not written in stone, but the idea of preparing this page is so that council makes what I call a wish list. What do you want to do as far as expenditure every year for the next 5, 10, 20 years? So what I did is I contacted all the managers. They come up with their wish list. What is it that they'd like next year? And you see under 2022, we have quite a list of things that council has reviewed that we may need. These are not, as I said, not mentioned in stone. Certain things, you see in there, for example, in the 2022, mini pumper, 204,000. I mentioned a few minutes ago that we're proposing to buy a $200,000 fire truck next year, 100,000 from last year, and from this year's reserve, 100,000 from next year's reserve. There's the money for that. So there's all kinds of equipment, upgrades to different things, the office, computers. Eaton Street, you see is listed in there at $300,000. That's not a guarantee that any of these things will be done or purchased or completed, but you have to have some kind of a plan. Because on the other side, you see, where are we going to get the funds for this? So we can get it from operating, that means you put it on the taxes. We can get it from reserves. As you can see, the majority of the funds that we've got in here, expenditures, we're showing it from reserve. And other would be provincial grants, because if the province pays 50%, we get 50% from the reserve, 50% from the province. Other places you can get money, I just mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that we're fixing the railway crossing on Crudenstead. We're getting some funding from the Army St. Andrews because they agreed to pay half. Anytime you can get money from a neighboring municipality, a company, sponsor, that's another way to when you're looking long term, you have to kind of think outside the box here, try to be creative. Where are we going to get the money? It can't all come from taxes. It can come from raised fees, money put aside. So this page is a wish list of what, and a possibility of what council would like to do in town for the next 5 years. But as I mentioned, just because it says a certain thing in a certain year doesn't mean it will happen that year. That's what we're aiming for. And I think we did a pretty good job this year of trying to fill in all the blanks. We certainly filled in all the things we need for the next 5 years. Are we going to be able to fund them? I will tell. I will tell them. That pretty well ends my presentation. Yeah, okay, I can mention the school tax. Okay. If you go back to page 1, is it on here? Yes. If you go back to page 1 at the top under revenue, you'll see that the total budget for revenue for this year is $2,936,000 budgeted. Out of that revenue, and that's an equal expense, is school requisition. $1,096,000. And then there's another fund of the province also kicks in a fairly large amount in there for the $700 they take off from the tax bill. So normally about 50% of the tax bill is school, 50% is municipal. This year and for previous years, when you got your tax bill and you were a resident of the community, permanent resident, you got $700 off your tax bill. The Premier just announced last week that that's being adjusted because they want to take the tax bill off the property bill. And they said 25% this year, 25% next year. So when you get your tax bill this year, instead of $700, you'll get $525. But to offset that, the province is sending a check to people for a similar amount. So we'll all be getting checks in the mail from the province. We have to remember when we get that check, that our tax bill will go up accordingly, so you have to kind of save it to pay that addition in the tax. So you might get your tax bill and it'll be higher than last year, but the province is going to give you a check to pay for that. Okay, so it's going to be an interesting first year because it never happened before. Next year, this year they paid 25%. Next year, the province is going to pay 50%. So, and that number will drop again from 700 to 525 to probably 75%. So as that number drops, they're making you a bigger check on the other side.
So when you get a check sent to you, you have to pay taxes on
No, that's to pay your taxes, that's not taxable.
that? Okay.
But, you know, it's like we all get these checks in the mail, hey, let's go for supper, and all of a sudden you get your tax bill, whoa, your tax bill went up $175. Now you're at supper, so, you know, and that's gonna happen the first year, right? We've all been getting these checks lately, the Autopath and everybody else, and, you know, it's gonna be a first. So there'll be some adjustments, and I'm sure the office here will be getting a lot of calls, because I'm saying tonight that the taxes basically are almost remaining exactly the same, but when they get the bill, it might be slightly higher because of the school tax being used. The school tax rebate. Remember, you've got to check in the mail for that. People sometimes tend to forget that. And we're all going to be in the state boat.
So it's important to note that when you're looking at your tax bill, that you look at your school tax portion of it and your municipal portion of it. Your school tax bill will definitely see, what Roger indicated, your tax credit from the school will be $500 rather than the
$525 instead of $700.
Rather than $700. So that causes it to be higher. So that's important to know.
And from what I understand, the way the premier announced it, normally the $700 is only available to permanent residents in the town. The way I heard it now is going to be permanent residents, cottage properties, and businesses. Now, the cottage property are getting 10%, not 25%, and I think the businesses are getting the same 10%. So there's going to be people in the community that might be getting refunds that never got before. So that's a plus for cottagers.
So cottagers would have not received that $750 tax credit on their tax bill. So then what they will receive, they'll see that their school tax, they wouldn't see the tax credit, but what they will be doing is getting an actual check.
Yeah, 10%.
For 10%.
It could be a lowering amount.
Farms were 10%.
Yeah.
Farms, let's say commercial.
Farms and residential. Yeah.
Commercial.
Yeah, and commercial.
So it's important this year to look at those two lines, your municipal tax and your school tax.
Because our municipal levy, and I'll get into it in a few minutes, basically has remained pretty well the same. Yeah, that's my presentation. I got one written question that I want to read. That's a question period. Should I do? I guess we can open up the questions now. So if anybody wants to call by phoning the office at 204-389-2698, we will have questions available. Please provide your name and your questions, and we'll do our best to reply to them. If they're quite detailed questions and require detailed answers, we'll take note of it and we'll provide a written reply to the individual in the next day or so. But if it's a really current, easy to access question, we'll try to reply to it in time. Generally, if it's an administrative type question, I'll try to answer them. If it's a political type question, why is council doing this, and that, the mayor should reply on behalf of everybody. Do we have any questions at all?
We do have someone on the line.
Yeah.
No, apparently we've lost that person.
Let's
Let's
one
question that we had mailed to us.
So I had one question this afternoon, and I almost answered it all, but I'll kind of go over it again. The question basically was for me to explain in detail our 2021 capital projects, what I just went through. You know, so I talked about the gravity. I really explained that all pretty well. We talked about the gravity, sewer scoping, the lift station, the sewer valves, the lagoon sludge, the well upgrade, lagoon fencing, and I mentioned the individual wants to know how we're going to fund this, 50% from the province, 50% from the reserve. So, as I said, I explained those pretty detailed already. The other ones, the Eaton valve upgrade, again, same thing. That would be on a 50-50 basis. I've explained it quite clearly, I think, what we're going to do.
Another question on
Good evening. Hello? Hello? You have a question?
I I do.
Okay?
I'm just wondering if any of the current capital projects
Yeah.
were at any time on the 5-year capital expenditure program, or are they all unexpected capital expenditures?
I think it'd be a combination of, because some of them, the lagoon, the sludge removal there, the upgrades and things like that, some of them would have been on the 5 years, some may not have been on the. Can we have a name, please, for the record?
Yeah, it's Steve.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, when I went through the 5-year capital program, some things are put on there. Sometimes some things are not on there, but things come up that have to be done. And I said this year, we've asked all the managers to come up with their wish list of what had to be done. Council reviewed them all, and we're doing a major upgrade to our sewer and water, some streets, some office projects. So some were on the 5 years, some are not. But as I said, what's put on the 5-year project, a program is not a binding document. It's our best estimate at the time. I'm quite pleased with what we have this year and what we have lined up for the next 5 years. But it'll change. It'll change next year, and it'll change every year. So some are on there, some are not.
So I guess most specifically is what's sludge removal in the 5-year capital expenditure program?
I don't have it. Just a minute. I have the budget from last year in front of me here. In 2020, for 20, that would have been for this year. No, there was no sludge removal on the budget for that year. No.
So why would your previous utility manager advise that sludge removal needed to be done, and everyone also recommended it as well? Did it never make it under capital expenditure program?
That's a decision of council at the time. As I mentioned when I started, the sludge has been there for a 30-year period, and municipalities, it's a big cost, and it's not unreasonable for municipalities to somewhat delay till we get funding. This year, we're very fortunate. We got 50% funding on all our sewer and water projects, so we took advantage of it, and we had the funds in our reserves. And as I said, we're doing one cell only. We may end up doing 2 or 3 if the numbers come in right. So this will give us capacity. That's the number one issue we have with the lagoon. We're short of capacity. We don't want to be in a position of over flooding at the lagoon. So by cleaning the cell, it'll give us capacity, and we'll be in a much better operation.
This is Tony speaking. Just so that we are understanding with the capacity part of it is with the new system, we have the new products that are put in there to bring down our phosphorus level and our other levels of products that are not that should not be going into the lake. So what happens? A lot of this material gathers up, and when we first did the lagoon project, we looked at what the sludge removal or the sludge level was at the time. We also had the engineers look at it at the time, and that is one of the things that we had talked about. And we weren't sure where, with this new aeration system, if the system was going to if it did increase the capacity because of the outflows that we have on a continuous basis. However, what we're looking at is because of the development within the community, we want to ensure that we have future capacity for our system. We have now had water services come in and done a study on the sludge to determine what we need to do there. And again, like Roger had mentioned, this type of project is done not on a yearly basis. We're informed that once we've done the sludge removal, that we'll probably be good for another 10 years without doing it. So what we're doing is we're ensuring that we have future capacity for our community with that sludge removal.
You said something that you want to ensure that you have capacity. Is it that you want to ensure, or that you have been advised that you don't have the capacity and that you actually need to do the sludge removal in order to be able to have any additional development in the community?
No, it's that we want to ensure that we have future capacity for our lagoon.
You're saying right now, you can go ahead after the existing issues with the development that's been requested, even without doing these questions.
Yeah, what we're looking at, we have a couple of issues with, again, that's why we have our valve issues that we want to look at. Because of the way, when we talk about capacity, we look at the capacity on the west side of the town. Right now, the way the system is running, it's taking the north side of the community and it's running the sewage into the west side. Thus, those numbers for that area, per the line, is extremely high. So in order to alleviate the plan, we have those two valves that are going to cause the north side sewage to go to the gravity system, thus alleviating the loads on the west side. That will give us the capacity, line capacity, on the west side to accommodate that development and other developments on that side.
Okay, so you just said that will differ. So, well, we need to do this in order to be able to have that development go through.
This sludge removal has to be done either way. The lagoons are too full, we need to remove the sludge.
The sludge removal.
So all I'm saying is, and don't get me wrong, I'm very happy with the development and very much in support of it. But my question is, do you actually need to do this in order to be able to enter into a development agreement? Or could you actually get into a development agreement without that sludge removal being done?
No, the development agreement is not, it's not on the, it's not onto the sludge removal. The development agreement is tied in with us fixing the valves on Eaton Avenue. It also ties in with ensuring that those two valves are operating properly and that we will be able to divert the north side sewage into our gravity system. Okay?
Very much. Yeah.
You're welcome. Is there anyone? Okay. We might as well just finish off.
What I was saying here?
Yes.
Yeah, well, and again, I said, I'm almost repeating what I said earlier. Accounting, we talked about it, the Uniware, the server, these are all the capital projects. As I mentioned, the solar water, the province is paying half. On all the other ones, it's strictly coming out of the reserve. They don't pay for half on those type of things. My summarization at the bottom of the question, most of these projects are projects which this council and previous council have discussed over the years. Almost a bit of an answer there too. The major amount of the funds are for much needed upgrades to the utilities. When working on a long-term plan for the municipality, council prepares a wish list of required projects, that's what I mentioned. Projects are completed on an order of priority and available funding by grants, reserves, borrowing, or operating funds. So you get a good year, you're expecting some more money, you get money in the reserve, you get funding from the province, you might do more that year than the year before. No final decision has been made because the other question was, will Eaton be paid this year? I put down no final decision has been made on the paving at this time. There's no funding in the budget for resurfacing of Eaton Street. That does not preclude council from proceeding in the fall, depending on how the repairs to the sewer line beneath Eaton turn out. If we do it early, we have money. We have $271,000 right now in reserve funds under the road improvement reserve funds for road projects. So we don't have a final cost on what Eaton cost, but there was about $300,000. So the fundings would be there. It's going to depend on the fall, what kind of fall we get, how damaged the roads are after we're done, that kind of stuff. So just because it's not in the budget, like any other expense, that doesn't mean it's not going to be done. And just because it would be in the budget doesn't mean it's going to be done. So it's a go and see a coach on the whole.
One important thing to always remember with a five-year capital plan and what we put in that 5-year capital plan there could be situations where there is some federal money or provincial money, grant money, where we could get 50-cent dollars or 25-cent or 75-cent dollars on projects. If that happens, then what we would do is take advantage of those grants in order to do other projects. If there are, for example, if there is a major roadway grants that are available, and let's say we wanted to do some more roadway, and if there was a large amount of grant, even though we did not have it in our 5-year capital, we might want to look at that because it's costing us only 50% of what it would actually cost us because we're getting a grant. So it's very important to remember, not everything that's in the 5-year capital project is what we will always just do.
It's a wish list.
Yes.
And that's what do we want to do here in the next 5 years? I always told council leaders, come up with all the things you think you want to do. Doesn't mean we're going to do it, but let's list them. So at least we're aware of what everybody's thinking. As the mayor mentioned, if special funding comes up, it might be worthwhile to borrow money. When you're borrowing at 2.8% for 20 years, it might make it worthwhile to borrow to do a certain thing. Because, hey, we can't pass up. This is a one-time thing. So,
and this is where this whole sludge thing is. When we look at the whole sludge program,
no.
when we have the sludge program, we've talked about the sludge program, and what we had said is, Water Services said that they would be supporting that at a 50-cent dollar, and we said, yeah, let's get it done. And I think it's very important. We knew what those costs were, and we've known what those costs were for many years. And we were very, very fortunate this year that we could get those 50-cent dollars to look at the costs. And as Roger had said, both the Water Services and our utility managers are looking at the best way to spend those dollars. And in fact, there are different systems to remove the sludge that we might even be able to, like Roger had said, be able to, with that money, be able to do more than one cell at the same time. So it's a good thing. Okay.
And my final words on that reply, writing was council prepares the annual budget on the best available information at the time of finalizing the budget. None of these numbers outlined in the budget are written in stone. Municipalities are not authorized to budget for deficit, again, and this is a balanced budget. The line-by-line items will change during the year. We don't know that, and we expect that. We're mainly concerned that we don't create a deficit at the end of the year. So that's the bottom line. And in the last 2 years, we ended up with a somewhat decent 100,000 or so surplus, and we put that into a fund, and then this year we're using part of that to balance the budget.
Any other comments? No? Okay.
Now we get a resolution to get out of this.
Yeah.
Be it resolved, the council adjourn the public hearing and resume this special meeting of council.
Can I have a mover, please? Councilor Gould. Second by Councilor Banks. Call for the question. All in favor? That we are now adjourned. From the public hearing.
Yes.
Okay. Now we go for the adoption of the financial plan.
Be resolved that pursuant to section 162(1) of the Municipal Act, the 2021 financial plan for the town of Winnipeg Beach, consisting of the 2021 operating budget, 2021 capital budget, the estimated 2022 operating revenue and expenditures, and the 5-year capital expenditure program be hereby adopted.
Can I have a mover, please? Councilor Carey, seconder. Councilor Gould. Call for the question. All in favor? Carried.
And the next item now is we gave first reading to the budget back in some time ago, I guess, in March. And today we give it second and third reading. Once council gives it second and third reading, we forward that document to the province, and they will prepare the tax bills for us. They print them all for us, return them to us, and I'm hoping certainly before the end of May, that the tax bills will be out there. So be resolved that council gives second reading to bylaw 1, 2021, being a bylaw for accepting the 2021 financial plan.
Can I have a mover, please? Councilor Gould, second by Councilor Banks. Call for the question. Any discussion? Call for the question then. All in favor? Carried.
The third reading requires a recorded vote. Be it resolved, the council give third reading to bylaw 1/2021, being a bylaw for accepting 2021 financial plan.
Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Carey, second by Councillor Banks. Any further discussion? Remember, it's a recorded vote. Call for the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. And then we go to our final item, the adjournment of our meeting. Can I have a mover? Councillor Banks, can I have a seconder? Councillor Gould?
Meeting adjourned at 7:26.
The meeting adjourned at 7:26. I just want to say again, thank you for everybody. Thanks for all the hard work for the staff, the councilors. Mark, thank you very much. Roger, thank you very much. And I think Terry Swanson here, I think this was kind of an interesting thing. You'll be having the floor next year. So